Customer development is really important, especially when you're starting off in order to know exactly which direction you're going to. But it also can be a hindrance if you do it the wrong way. What I see is a lot of times people use customer development in a way to kind of validate their ideas that they have, their preconceived notions, without actually taking too much into consideration the actual feedback from the users. So these are some common mistakes I see people or startup founders do when it comes to customer development. The first big assumption I see that a lot of startup founders do is that they assume their customer. This kind of sounds obvious, but I really have to hammer it home that it's really hard to know really deeply inside what your customer is thinking. And sometimes things that are very obvious to us are not so obvious to the customer. So you really have to come at it with an open mind to try to see what holes you have in your thinking that actually the customer could fill. One example for us is when we were starting off, the registration form for our product had an option to choose a subdomain. So it's a multi-tenancy SaaS application. So every customer gets their own subdomain. We had a very simple form in the question that was basically, what subdomain do you want for your website? A lot of people put their entire website URL there, or they just put their company name in there. They didn't really know what to fill it in. For us, it was obvious. Subdomain looks like a subdomain, but a lot of our customers didn't understand that. So basically, at the end of the day, we just realized that we could just create a subdomain for them, and no one's ever complained. So we basically take their company name and then just concatenate it into a subdomain. No one's really complained about that since we've developed that years ago. So what did we learn from that situation? One, actually subdomains aren't that big of an issue for our customers at least. And two, a lot of them don't understand what a subdomain is. And three, we were able to eliminate that field on the form and simplify our sign-up field just because it was not a big issue for them. As a developer, I've signed up for a lot of services where it asks you what subdomain do you want, and I thought as a developer that's what people wanted in general, but it wasn't the case for our customers. So again, we assumed what our customers were thinking, but at the end of the day we were wrong, and it's actually hindering their sign up. So that's one thing I would look out for. Second issue that I see is assuming that customers know what other customers want. So in the same way you don't know what your customers want, other customers also don't know what other customers want. So any type of question would say, do you think other people would want this? Or what do you think other people would pay for this? Those types of questions, a lot of the data you get from that isn't that valid because, again, they don't really know what others are thinking. This especially applies to asking about charging or costs. Instead of saying, what do you think someone would pay for this? It's better to ask, what would you pay for this? The third issue that I see is assuming that customers know themselves, which sounds funny, but I actually see this come up a lot. If you actually ask somebody something like, what do you typically eat in a week? And they'll tell you, they seem to throw in a lot of healthy meals that they've eaten. But if you ask them directly, what did you eat in the last week? Then you get the truth. Similarly, how often do you usually exercise? People will probably overestimate how much they exercise. When you actually ask them directly, how much did you exercise in the past week? Again, you'll get the actual answer. So customers' assumptions of what they would do in the future about themselves, a lot of times is actually wrong too. So the best way to get real data from them is to ask them what they actually did in the past. That's how you can know for sure accurately what they're doing and what they actually would do in the future, as opposed to having them assume based on what they hope. Example for us is we had a photo editing application in the past, and we asked a lot of these customers, what formats would you want to export your photos in? They gave us a long list of different types of formats that they want their photos to be exported as. But then we flipped the question and asked them, what photo formats have you exported in the past, or would you, or do you use? And it was just a small list of photo formats that they wanted. So when it came time for us to develop the application, we just included a couple formats and they were fine with it. So again, asking them what they would use a lot of the times leads you astray. The fourth big issue that I see is creating imaginary assumptions, and this is the biggest one that could really lead you astray. So I really want to emphasize this point. by you seeding the customer with a question, such as, would you use this feature? That's leading the witness and kind of trying to extract out of them an assumption that really doesn't exist. So why is this a bad way to phrase the question? It's really easy to say yes. A lot of them will not want to reject a free feature or a feature that's included, for example, because why not? Doesn't really hurt them. But if you actually follow through and develop the feature, a lot of the times they don't even use it, is what you'll see. A better way to ask them in terms of features is just directly ask them, what type of feature would you want for this? Instead of seeding them with a feature that they might use, it's better just to directly ask them, what type of feature would you want? Or have them in their own words describe the application. And again, based on that feedback, you just develop what they said. Instead of trying to seed them or lead them in a certain direction that you assume they would want, just let them lead you. And that's the best way to get the real data that they'll actually use. And you'll see when you actually develop an application that they've directly told you that they would want it in this way, well, it's almost obvious in retrospect, but they will end up using it. So in conclusion, I've come across a lot of these issues in myself when developing past startups, and I see a lot of other founders do it. So it takes a little bit of practice to kind of train yourself to kind of avoid these mistakes. But like a muscle, the more you do it, the more you get used to it. And after a while, you get to realize the real benefits of it. As you develop features that customers really want and use, you'll realize how important it is to do this type of customer development, and it was all worth the effort.